Dear friends, I welcome you once again to the English Sage. All of you know that I've been doing a series of lectures on public speaking. I gave you the introduction to public speaking. I also spoke about the way to overcome stage fright and also the dynamics of public speaking. Today, I will tell you about the narrative speech. What is narration? Narration is the act of telling a story or an event, or it's recounting an experience or series of related events. All of us do a lot of narration in our everyday life. We narrate many events to many people under different circumstances. So narration is a part of our life. It's an act of telling a story or an event. It can be either fictional or non-fictional. Narrative speech can be, as I said earlier, both fictional and non-fictional. If it's fictional, you can make up all of the events or part of the events. Or it can be a personal narrative, true narrative about an event that happened in your life. Can also be narrated, can also be spoken as a narrative speech. Many factors are considered in narrative speech. We have to consider the setting, that is, where are we going to give the speech, the location, and who is the narrator. If you are the narrator, you have to know where you are going to speak. And you can speak about the different events that have happened in your life or some events which you have witnessed. And characters in the story, characters in the narrative are very important. They play a major role in the narrative speech. And we have to keep in mind the audience. The speech that is selected or the speech that you're going to speak, the topic that you're going to speak should sync, should connect with the audience. You have to take into consideration the gender, the age group, their culture, and other things before selecting the speech. And the theme of the speech is also very important. So these are the factors to be considered while selecting a narrative speech. We'll look at the setting. The environment or surrounding in which the story or event took place has to be told, has to be very good. That is, the location, date, and time of your narration or the event that has taken place has to be considered. And where and when that has happened is also very important. We'll next look at the narrator. Narrator is the person or the character who tells you what is happening in a book or a film. If you're the speaker, you are the narrator. You are the character. You are telling what is happening in that book or in a film or in that speech. You narrate the event. And naturally, we come into the part of events. So we recount the events, or we can also say that we can tell what happened in that particular episode or in that particular event. You narrate that circumstances or those circumstances. Characters are also very important. We are talking about the story or the people or the characters in the story, in the narrative, who the story is about. Is it about people? Is it about animals? Is it about creatures? So these things, people, animals, creatures, they are the characters in the story. And as I said earlier, audience is very important. Audience are the spectators or the listeners of the performance or speech. We have to keep in mind, as I said earlier, is it a mixed gender or is it a single gender, or what is the age group where I am speaking? Because all these things are to be considered while giving a speech. Something that is good in one culture may not be good in another culture. All these things have to be considered, and you have to think of the audience before selecting the speech. We now come to the theme of the speech. We are talking about the central idea, topic, subject, or message of that particular speech. What is the main idea of that speech or the story or that event? What is the lesson or moral we want to convey to the audience? What is the topic of that story? All these things come under theme. As is the case in all speeches, narrative speech also has an introduction. Give a brief introduction of the topic. Plan your introduction according to the time allotted to you. You then move on to the body. Try to include at least 2 examples that support your introduction. Use transitions like next, thereafter, later to clarify steps so that your audience can follow the timeline or the storyline. And as you're narrating an event that has already happened or an experience that you have experienced, use past tense. Practice to identify and use correct verb conjugations. Summarize the story and highlight the important points in the conclusion. You can also include your opinion or a word of advice or a suggestion in the conclusion. The narrator's pitch, tone of voice, gestures, pronunciation, and other speech features influence the audience a lot. The narrator's pitch has to be optimal. It should not be too high or too low. And he has to modulate his pitch. And that narrator's tone of voice is also very important. Gestures means the non-verbal communication, we can say. They play a major role in narrative speech. Pronunciation is also very important, and many other speech features influence the audience a lot. To be effective narrator, to give a very effective narrative speech, write out the story, time yourself, visualize yourself giving the speech. Practice, practice, practice. Do not memorize it word for word, and try to make it sound natural. As is told, practice makes man perfect. Practice is very important. Write out the story, time your story, time yourself, plan the introduction, plan the body, plan the conclusion, everything in that time frame, and then visualize yourself giving the speech. Try to make it sound natural. The narrator must exhibit sincerity and wholeheartedness. He or she must be enthusiastic. If the narrator himself or herself is not enthusiastic, if she or he doesn't show that enthusiasm, the audience also will not be interested in the speech. And try to learn or master your body language. Non-verbal communication, which is nothing but body language, plays a very important role. It's vital to narrate a speech, to deliver a speech. And speak to the audience as if they were all your friends. The topics for the narrative speech can be varied. You can talk about your life experiences. For example, an experience that changed your life or your perspective towards life. You can also speak about your childhood, a visit to your grandparents' house, or any childhood memory. You can also talk about your education, like your first day at school or college, favorite teacher or role model, or you can also talk about travel, like the best or worst holiday you have ever experienced. So, these are some of the topics for narrative speech. So, dear friends, I hope you got an overview of the narrative speech. I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and also click on the bell icon for regular updates of my uploads. Have a good day.